Hey, everybody, this is Joe Joseph, and this is the dailysheeple.com Daily News Brief. And what do we have here to start off with but a TDS article entitled, Fake News, Mainstream Media Claims Trump Plans to Restructure and Cut Back the CIA. Of course, Donald Trump and his camp denies the allegations are, of course, 100% false. And I want to get into this a little bit because this kind of shows you how the mainstream media is spinning a lot of things to cause a lot of hate and discontent. In this case, and this is by Melissa Dykes. She says President John F. Kennedy once famously said he wanted to, quote, splinter the CIA into 1,000 pieces and scatter it to the winds. Some of us suggested that sentiment is a large part of what got him killed. I have to agree. I'll bet you that's exactly what got JFK killed, is the fact that, you know, he really wasn't into a lot of the things that the intelligence community was doing at the time. And of course, there's a lot of talk about the JFK pissing off the Federal Reserve, wanting to do away with that, instituting silver certificates. And of course, soon after that, he went the way of the dodo, just like Abraham Lincoln. Soon after, of course, he introduces the greenback. And you can't have interest-free currency. The bankers don't like that. So they knock you off, you know. And of course, I do believe the CIA had a very large part to play in that. There's a documentary out there called The Dark Legacy. You can check it out. And it basically gets into how the Bush family actually has ties into the JFK assassination as well, through the CIA. So check that out. It says this is not quite the same exact sentiment, but mainstream media outlets far and wide this week that President-elect Donald Trump has plans to overhaul and parse back not just the Office of Director of National Intelligence, which the Wall Street Journal reports that Donald Trump believes has become bloated and politicized, but the CIA as well. Based on unnamed sources, the Wall Street Journal reported that one of the people familiar with Mr. Trump's plan said advisors are working on a plan to restructure the CIA, cutting back on staffing at its Virginia headquarters and pushing more people out into the field all around the world. Well, I mean, if you are the CIA and you're working the way that we understand it works, I would assume that's what you would do. The problem is the CIA is so much bigger and so much more broad than that. That almost seems to simplify or way oversimplify the Leviathan that CIA is. You have to understand that a very small portion of its funding actually comes from the government. A lot of its funding comes from front companies all over the world that bring in billions upon billions of dollars to this unbelievable vacuum of resources, all with the reason, I mean, the whole reason behind it, of course, is to provide that shadow government and that level of control for your Rothschilds, your Rockefellers, etc., etc. It says the Wall Street Journal also noted that the CIA failed to comment on the story, which goes on to speculate the announcement came after Trump has been critical of the still unsupported U.S. intelligence community accusation that Russia hacked the 2016 U.S. presidential election. I just saw today a Senate hearing with James Clapper, the director of national intelligence, and a Navy admiral. I can't remember his name. I think he was chairman of the Joint Chiefs. Anyway, they were testifying before this committee, and Clapper's citing this evidence, which he will not show or get into. The only thing that I've seen as evidence that they've put out there is the fact that the Russians were celebrating the Trump victory. Now, if you remember any of Trump's rhetoric prior to, he's very Russia friendly. It wasn't strange to Russia. It wasn't news to Russia. I mean, he's always been kind of, whatever's good for business. But this is the justification that the CIA has, or at least the only thing that I've seen that says, oh, yeah, they're the hackers because they were happy that Trump won. That's what they're saying, basically, as I understand it. Now, there may be more, But I haven't seen anything put out there to show any conclusive evidence that it was Russia. And in their own words, at the highest levels of Russian government, which seem to infer President Putin's own hand in this, which I don't think much gets by Putin on the political side. I don't think much gets by Putin when it comes to important decisions. And he probably is a major micromanager. But this seems well below his station. That's all I'm saying. And this, again, when you look at what Julian Assange has said with regards to this leak, the Clinton emails, the Podesta emails, all that kind of stuff, you find out that it was people inside the Democratic Party. Why? Because they were pissed that they got steamrolled like Ron Paul did not 4 years earlier. Now his buddy Bernie Sanders gets steamrolled. And they were pissed. So, yeah, of course, probably somebody leaked the emails. That seems to me a very plausible explanation. And it just seems to fit everything much better than, the Russians did it. Now, does Russia stand to gain from a Trump presidency? Absolutely it does. Compared to what's going on right now, look at what's going on right now. I mean, is there any question that in the next couple of weeks or so that Chairman Obama can't pull some sort of action or cause some sort of ruckus out there to warrant a declaration of a national emergency that may prevent any sort of transition? It could be. I mean, it's certainly something to explore or something to at least speculate on and have on your radar. It could very well happen. We don't know what's going to happen in the next couple of weeks. I noticed on yesterday's Daily News Brief, there were a lot of comments on there about, have I shot Trump down before he's even started, all this kind of stuff. Let me tell you something. It's not easy. I want the guy to succeed. I want anybody in that office to succeed. But the problem is history shows and paints a very different picture. And what we've come to find out is everybody makes these promises and nobody follows through with them. It happens every single time. There's no reason to expect or get your hopes up that Trump is going to wave a magic wand and automatically solve all your issues. It would be nice if maybe slow and steady wins the race and he makes some headway. But you got to remember, he's just the president. And there's some power to be had there. However, Congress wields a lot of that power. And you have a lot of war hawks and you have a lot of established people in Congress that could make a very hard time for him. It would be Trump's, in his best interest, to come out of the gate swinging and be, as hardline as he possibly can against the establishment, if that's the way he wants to do it. I kind of look at Brandon Smith at altmarket.com and some of the things that he's written about it, and I kind of believe that he's absolutely right. Trump is their man, and he's exactly where he's supposed to be at this time. Only he's one of them. See, they got one of them in there. And, of course, there was a lot of outrage and a lot of built-up outrage at the corporations, the mega corporations here in the United States, over in Europe. There's a lot of pushback, a lot of populism that's going on because, really, we are the 21st century edition of what happened late 19th, early 20th century with the robber barons and the money trust. And what we see now is the exact same thing playing out, only it's 120, 150 years later, where technology has changed, humanity's changed, society's changed, everything's changed. But the song remains the same. That's why I can tell you, a lot of people get mad. They're all hung up in that cult of personality, that Donald Trump cult of personality. You got all that hope in your heart. And God knows we all want change anywhere that's actually in our best interest and not in the best interest of corporations or the military industrial complex or other governments or all their cronies. But you have to understand that the people always get the short end of the stick. It's the way it goes. It's what happens with history. That's why I can say these things. Because I've studied this, like crazy and lived through a lot of it as well. And of course, the mainstream media is one of their biggest tools to keep people attached to that cult of personality, to keep them in the dark about certain things, to keep their discernment dulled by flooding them with news that they claim is legit that's actually not. John Rappaport of No More Fake News writes a great piece, 10 basic forms of fake news used by major media. This is good stuff because you have to be able to identify this kind of stuff to sharpen your discernment. John Rappaport's no slouch when it comes to that too. You know, he's former mainstream media. He says the basic purpose of these 10 forms is the presentation of a false picture of reality, a matrix, if you will. He says you could find more forms or divide them into 10, or divide these 10 into subcategories. He says the 10 basic forms: direct lying about matters of fact, leaving out vital information, and of course you have limited hangout. This is an admission of a crime or a mistake, which only partially reveals the whole truth. The idea is that by admitting a fraction of what really happened and burying the biggest revelations, people will be satisfied and go away, and the story will never be covered again. We see that all the time. You know, they typically say, if you can't get the vital information out within the first 72 hours, you've lost the story. It's done. And that's being very generous, because I'll tell you what, the more that you do this, the more you find out that people's attention spans with regards to anything is very short. They want to move on. You know, the news gets old. Plus, they're just, think about the amount of input that's just flooding your brain at any given time. So you're basically having to pick and choose all the time, you know, and you've become accustomed to wanting that different information, that different change, that different, you know, a variety. And when you keep hearing the same information over and over again, you tend to, I've seen it. I mean, it's unbelievable. That's why, you know, the news cycle is they're always looking to change things up, cycle it up. Everything's got to be new, got to be hot, because they know they've only got a limited amount of time to do it. And that also, you know, like I said, it plays to them. It's an advantage for them using this limited hangout method. Number 4, he says, shutting down the truth after publishing it, including failing to follow up and investigate a story more deeply. Number 5 is not connecting dots between important pieces of data. Or 6, censoring the truth wherever it's found or calling it fake news. 7, repeating a false story many times. This includes the echo chamber effect, in which a number of outlets bounce the false story among themselves. We've seen that countless times. How one will pick it up and then the next thing and the next thing, and they're just perpetrating that lie and getting it out into the public domain. Also, claiming a reasonable and true consensus exists when it really doesn't. When there are many important dissenters who are shut out from offering their analysis. Then, of course, they employ a panoply of effects: reputation of the media outlet, voice quality of the anchor, you've got acting skills, dry mechanical language, you got studio lighting, overlay of electronic transmissions, to create this impression of an elevated authority which is beyond challenge. See, these are the traditional forms and methods. John Rappaport continues, he says, here's an example of a big story that deploys all 10 forms of fake news. The swine flu pandemic of 2009. It says here, in the spring of 2009, the World Health Organization, elevated authority beyond challenge, announced that swine flu was a level 6 pandemic, its highest category of danger. In fact, there were only 20 confirmed cases at the time, and that is direct lying about danger. And WHO quietly changed the definition of level 6, so widespread death and damage were no longer required. Another aspect of direct lying. The source was, of course, picked up by major media outlets all over the world, which gives you, of course, the echo chamber effect, the fake consensus, and never connected dots with regards to the World Health Organization lies. And quite soon, swine flu cases rose into the 1,000. And, of course, that was direct lying, because we know that there weren't that many cases. And if you want to go on, you can read this rest of the story over at the Daily Sheeple. Of course, we pick up all of John Rappaport's great work. But that just gives you an idea of how they employ this. And so it's very important that you use your discernment. They don't want you to do that. They don't want you to do that. But alternative media, of course, is the major reason why Trump won the election. It wasn't the Russians. It was alt media. It was WikiLeaks. It was citizens. It was the people. It was not the establishment. And, you know, what's happening now is there's a major attack, not just on alternative media sites and things like that, but also on companies that alt media rely on to get this information out. And I say alt media in that everybody out there is alt media. Every single one of you watching today is alt media. Why? Because alt media is simply citizen reporting. It is providing accountability at the lowest level. I mean, this is it. I should say highest level. I mean, we are the boss after all, or are supposed to be. But they're attacking outlets now. SoundCloud is a major, major platform for alt media and different personalities to put out their podcasts or their radio shows or any sort of audio media out there in a cost-effective way. SoundCloud, it says, according to factmag.org, may run out of cash this year after a $52 million loss in 2015. Listen to this. It says that SoundCloud posted a $52 million loss in 2015 and may run out of cash before the end of 2017. Alex Lejeune, who's the co-founder, warned that the company may need to seek additional funding if its subscription service does not perform as hoped. I'll say this. Subscription services are hard to do. You know, I've seen it before. I've tried to do it with other outlets, all their alt media outlets. And I can tell you, it is very, very, very difficult to do like 100% listener supported because people don't donate like they used to, because the economy is not as rosy as they paint it, because people are struggling a lot more than they used to. You know, that American dream that's supposed to exist that doesn't exist. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. And it shows across the board, you know, the American dream, you know, used to be that our military, and you can basically, you know, military can often be a direct representation of the condition of the country. And in this case, according to my North Dakota Now, an engine fell off a B-52 while on a training mission. It just happens all the time. You know, again, it's a B-52. It's a strategic nuclear bomber. Now, I know that these things have been in the air for about 60 years now. I don't know why the United States keeps these things around. I mean, they're awesome to see, but they're old, they're outdated, and an engine fell off one of them while on a training mission over Minot, North Dakota. Now, luckily, it fell off over a wildlife refuge, right? But you have to think, wow, thank God that it fell off over a wildlife. Could you imagine if it fell off like over a city? There's a B-52. And what would the people think when they see this cylindrical object falling off a B-52 down to them? I mean, you want to talk about a collective shitting of the pants moment. That's certainly one of them, I would have to say. I'm Joe Joseph. This was the DailySheeple.com's Daily News Brief, and I'll have one again for you mañana. Have a good night, everybody. I'll see you tomorrow.